All right, we're back with Ken and Mike on My Uncle's Escaped Alcatraz. Cindy is working on another project right now, so she's busy doing that. She's on a deadline for another project, so she won't be joining us today. And to start things off, we have some really good news for our listeners and people who watch us on YouTube. So I know we've been kind of alluding to the fact that we've been working on a television deal based upon Ken and Mike's book and what we've been talking about on the podcast for the past year, over 64 episodes now? Are we at?
64, yeah.
64 hours of long episodes that we've been diving into this abyss of Alcatraz. But the good news is that we just secured a green light for a television deal for 4 episodes based upon what we've been talking about. And so the world's going to be able to not only see it, everybody's going to see it. And, I won't be in it, but Ken and Mike will be in it. And we have a bunch of other people that you may have seen on the podcast or heard in the podcast. They're going to be involved. And it's super, super exciting. And I was thrilled to give the news to, because we've been working on this for, I think about 7 months now.
Yeah.
With the network that we're talking to and that we're in partnership with. And it was great. They're excited. We're excited. They were excited from the beginning, which was great. And they were just trying to figure out, how to do it. And if anybody knows anything about the TV industry right now, it is very tumultuous. So the fact that we were able to secure a deal like this in this time frame is a Herculean effort. So, but how do you guys feel about it?
I'm excited. I mean, this is like multi years for me, coming to a conclusion. It's always been a dream of mine to tell this story. So any avenue that I have, I'm excited to take it. I'm very thankful to you and Cindy too. I mean, Mike helped me take this out of my mind and put it into word, and you and Cindy gave us a voice to take this book and talk to people. So yeah, I mean, many thanks to both Mike and you and Cindy from me. So.
Fantastic. I'll pass on the thanks. How about you, Mike? How do you feel?
For me, it's humbling because I was able to attach myself to this amazing story. I have no personal connection to it. I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area and I visited Alcatraz many, many years ago and have always been interested in the story. And it's always the what if they made it, what if they're out there somewhere? And I was able to meet with Ken and we were able to decide to work together and be a part of this. And now, we're on the precipice of solving one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. It's up there with JFK and Amelia Earhart and Jimmy Hoffa and D.B. Cooper. And now Alcatraz. They're all in the same arena of mystery. And, with this show, we have strong confidence that we're gonna solve this thing. We're going to be pursuing leads that we've talked about on the podcast and people who have reached out to us and things that we've done. We've examined things and we are very hopeful in this show that we're going to have some answers for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also throw in, I just remember back in 2015 when I originally went down this road with History Channel. I really thought the photograph that we produced was going to pretty much settle the issue of whether or not John and Clarence made it. In my mind, I thought that was enough, but I'm very excited that we're going to take even stronger evidence and pretty much close this case out.
Yeah. Well, even though we have all this information and we're going to bring more information to the table and provide more, hopefully evidence, you're going to have the naysayers. You're going to be, but I think we're all confident that the work we've been doing for the past year and a half, both on the podcast, because what a lot of viewers and listeners don't understand is there's been so much legwork done outside of the podcast as far as research. You guys, we built on your research, and then we kind of took a deep dive ourselves, down into Brazil, and like, every day Ken was getting information from people in Brazil, and we met new people, and then recordings from former correctional officers had surfaced that we didn't realize were still alive, had come out. So it's been a discovery period for all of us, even on the podcast, independent of all the work you guys had done prior. So, and I think there's even more left to be done. And now, which is great, is we're going to have the resources to really explore this the way, Ken, you've always wanted to. Mm-hmm. And because you always said, he goes, I want to get back down to Brazil. In the last podcast, he goes, I don't care what happens with everything that's happened. He goes, we're going down there. We're going to figure out how to go down there, and we're going to solve this thing. So now we have resources to do that, and that's super, super exciting. And what we do find out, the whole world's going to find out.
Yes.
And I think it's a testament to your tenacity and Mike's tenacity and our tenacity to not give up, because we started this thing from scratch, and built an audience.
And we were talking before the show started, two things. One of them was there was another network that was interested in the show way back months and months and months ago, and they ultimately didn't really have a lot of faith in what we were doing, and they sort of kind of lowballed us and didn't give us very much. And so it's like, well, we're not going to take the deal.
Yeah.
And so we had to start all over again. And I'm sure there were other people and places that you talked to, pitched, phone calls, emails that didn't pan out. And then finally we had one that said, yes, we're interested. We want to work with you. And
yep.
Now that they've said yes, they've greenlit the show officially. We were also talking about that they're going to give us real money to pursue the search and to get the answers. It's not just going to be done on a shoestring budget. They're giving us the resources we need to do this thing right. So if there are naysayers, they won't be many, because we're going to hopefully have irrefutable evidence that just really can't be denied.
Yeah. That's I kind of told had a call with them today, the network, and was saying that what was really the eye-opening for me is when we went to Alcatraz and we did the podcast from Alcatraz, and how you guys couldn't even get your book in that store before it got published, right after it got published, and into the gift shop. And now, like, when you walk in there was gigantic signs, there was books everywhere. We looked down near the pier, in the gift shop, and the fact that and then, like, while we were doing the podcast, they kept on bringing boxes and more books, for you guys to sign. So it was a total 360 for you guys. And, and it was cool to see for you guys, and to really kind of get that kind of welcome after all your hard work. And I told them, I said, the reason why they flipped is because of, you could prove everything that's in the book. You could source it all. And that was, I think that's the key here. The fact that, you've backed it up, and we've backed it up with, research. And, we've had some help too, with people coming out, some, who've helped us along the way. So, but congrats to both of you guys. Kudos to all of us for our hard work.
We all lifted a heavy load together. Everyone was needed to make this happen. Yeah.
But now we have a heavier load to lift. We got to deliver 4 episodes, so which I think is going to be great.
In those 4 episodes, I really believe we're going to close this case. We're good. We're going to solve the mystery, once and for all. I already know what the mystery is. I mean, I already know they made it. So that
exactly.
It's me, but we are definitely going to bring hard evidence this time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's like you've lived this, and your biggest thing is trying to prove to everybody else that what has been in your brain and what your family has told you. And so it's got to be super gratifying for you to be at this point. And,
yeah.
Well, one of the things that we talked about before, when Art was on the show the last time, we were saying, well, what about Chechi's testimony about seeing the boat? What about, Whitey saying that it was common knowledge the day after the escape, they found the raft on Angel Island, and other examples of people coming forward, or Fred Breezy saying in 1992 to the family, I met the brothers in Brazil and I got to see their farm. And he sort of dismissed it all, said, well, they're just lying. It's not true.
Right.
Without providing any evidence of it. He just said, well, criminals lie, so therefore you can't believe anything they say. Even though, as we talked about, we have multiple sources of information saying the same thing. So it's not just incumbent on one person saying something, we have others. But with this show happening, we can go to those places and we can get that proof that they can't say is, you can't just dismiss it with a wave of your hand.
Yeah, well, they can dismiss it anyway. I mean, anybody can dismiss anything, so that's the problem.
But if you're going to be honest, you have to look at it objectively. Say, what does the evidence show, and what is the documentation we're going to gain from the show? That's going to be really, really hard to just say it's not true or I don't believe it.
Yeah, I agree. But,
you're never, like you said, Rob, you're never going to convince some people. Even if we, exhume John, they still wouldn't believe it. They would still claim that it's not him or we made up. It was amazing how they took that 1975 photograph after multiple, professionals looked at it and said, yes, that's them. Then you had Michael Dykes who tried to come in and, we believe it's one of the other brothers. Like, Uncle Man. I mean, they didn't discount that it was in England. They just didn't want to believe that it was John or Clarence.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have people that's going to do that. But I don't really care. It's not the point of you trying to prove to me they didn't make it. I already know they made it. But what I love about this story and about this book is that it's the uncovering their journey into Alcatraz, the people that they interacted with. And then, oh my gosh, when you start tying in people like Mickey Cohen, and you start digging into that, there's more, I've already said this, more to this story than just the escape.
Yep.
And that's what I really kind of hope that we bring out too.
Yeah.
Not just that we find them, but we tell this story that very few people know about. Exactly.
And one of those people that helped tell this story for you was Whitey Bulger. And that's we're going to, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the letters and your pen pal, Whitey Bulger, and the correspondence that you had with him. And so Mike was nice enough to kind of summarize some of these letters and kind of the highlights where he was talking about, because you guys talked about a bunch of stuff. So, so I wanted to kind of start off with, one section where he, and we talked about this a little bit, and some of this stuff, we have, but just hearing it in these summaries.
Before we get into the summaries, just for audience sake, maybe Ken can just kind of talk about how he got the letters and where they originated, so there's a context.
Sure.
Yeah, so I said this one time before. I didn't really even know who Whitey Bulger was. The first time I ever heard the name, and I just never kept up with criminals before 2012. I mean, I knew criminals, but I never really kind of kept up with them. And my first contact, or our contact with Whitey Bulger, was in 2012 when we had an individual come up when we were out with my mom and my her sister, my Aunt Merle, and my dad. We were out 50th anniversary, and someone came up to my mom and gave her a letter that Whitey Bulger had written and wanted her to have. And so my mom started corresponding with him, and it was pretty much, just asking about her brothers. And, it was I've looked at the letters. He never really kind of said a whole lot. And I didn't realize, I was looking at my very first letter. He sent me, I must have wrote him before, but he actually sent it to me on September 2015 was the first letter I got from him. And when I reached out to him, my intention was just really to get a better understanding about John and Clarence, because he was in there with them. He wasn't in there with them a long period of time, but, I wanted any type of information that he might have. And I didn't really know what to expect out of someone like him, I wrote him and I was trying to be nice. His first letter was very, surface level. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Yeah, I knew your uncles. And, but then I started sharing stories about my uncles with him. And, he really started kind of opening up a little bit. I could tell the second letter that he wrote me, he told me, don't call him Mr. Bolger anymore, because that's how I referred to him. He said, my friends call me Jim. You're now my friend. I want you to start referring to me as Jim. And we just, over the course of 3 years, we just became very good friends, as far as friends, from the standpoint of a criminal and me. And I was just really shocked at what he started sharing with me. At first he was very standoff. He didn't say a whole lot. But he really shared some things with me that is just unbelievable. And he even told me in one of the letters, he said, I'm going to share some stuff with you that I've never shared with anyone, ever. And he just started talking about his relationship with John and Clarence and Frank Morris, and, his role in this escape. A lot of people didn't believe that he had a part in this, but he did.
Oh, yeah.
And I really wish, I know he would still been in prison, but I really wish he would have still been alive to see us get to this point with this book, because he had a big inspiration in me carrying forward some of these stories.
Yeah. He validated a lot of the things that you thought did happen.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of things that he said, I was able to back him up, not only in the FBI files that, I could go into a lot of detail, but I won't, just because we only have an hour. And I really hope maybe in this series that we're going to do, we can really, dig into more with it, and really bring it out to the point that people will see things that they never, like I said, they never knew happened. So. Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's talk about some of the correspondence. One of the things, this second entry from the top, I'm just going to read it and then we can kind of discuss it. And then it says, when they pushed the duck cover, this is relating to the escape, it fell a few feet onto the flat roof where hundreds of seagulls lived. We heard the thud over in C block, and the seagulls started a very loud chatter as they flew up. House was loud. We leapt out of bed, started banging the bed legs on the floor and racking metal cups on the bars to distract the guard in the cell house and the guard in the gun walk, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, to me, he definitely backed up of things that other prisoners had said, and was recorded in the FBI files too, that, there were a lot of prisoners that knew what was happening that night. He was one of them. And, they tried their best to cover up anything that happened, any noise. In fact, he even, says in that same letter that when he heard that noise, he thought they had got caught. He thought for sure this is over with,
Mm-hmm.
And they realized, hey, we've got to make noise. We've got to do everything we can to distract these guards. And, it wasn't unusual from what he had said in other letters that even when they're, just a regular night, sometimes the prisoners would just go crazy in their cell, banging stuff together. And, the guards would go ape and they would try to quiet everyone down. But yeah, so he definitely helped in that part of it.
Yeah. And then that kind of goes right. Did you want to say something, Mike?
Yeah. I as you were talking about it, it reminded me when I had the conversation with Charles Herman, who was the guard on the floor at the time. the one that was later blamed for the escape, or not the escape itself, but just allowing it to happen because he didn't do his last head count before clocking out that night. And his version of it, he said he heard the thud, he heard the noise on the top, and that he had called it in, that he reported it, and the person on the other end of the phone kind of dismissed it like, oh, it's this or it's that. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was very dismissive of it and like, don't worry about it. And one of the things that we've talked about before that he still, at the time when I spoke to him, still felt very strongly about was that he was unfairly blamed for it, that he did do his job. He did call it in. And the other person, the other guard that he talked to, didn't act on this information, but he was singled out as the one that was culpable for the whole thing. And it was a 20-day suspension, no pay. He wasn't fired. He did finish his stint there until 63 when it closed down. And that's when he left and eventually moved to Arizona with his wife, where he's still alive today, still there, at least the last we'd heard from. So in Whitey's accounts, he talks about in several of the letters, he repeats the story, kind of gives, variations of it. And he said that he distracted the guard with the noise of the banging in the beds, and that the guard just sort of kind of went on his way. He didn't act on it. He didn't do anything with it. That was his account of what happened. Whereas Charles Herman said that he did act on it. He heard it and he did act. So, but of course, in the end, nothing happened, and the three got away. So it's you have these sort of these same but different accounts of what took place.
It's a telephone game.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a telephone game. Well, cool. This is one of my favorite ones that he wrote to you, and he says, John and Clarence and Frankie, called him Frankie, gave us all a happy day on June 12th at 7:10 a.m. when Sarge, an ex-20-year man, went to go get Frankie up for stand-up count, pushed or slapped his head, and his head flied on the floor, and he leaped back in horror. And the floor guard and the gun walk kept hollering, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" He said, Sarge got his voice back and hollered, "Morris is gone." And we erupted in cheers, drowning out the cusses of the guards. We let out a cheer that lasted for 5 minutes. Morale shot up, and they deadlocked us for days.
And that brings up and backs up what Cliff Fish said. That very statement that he said in that letter, because Cliff Fish talked about that the morning he came in of the escape, everybody was locked in their cell, and that they didn't have really a lot to do. So that's when he was, because they had so many guards and no one was being let out to go to work. Everybody was locked down in their cells. So a lot of guards are pretty much kind of standing around doing nothing, and him and Olaf are the ones who go out in the boat and eventually find the raft. But that backs up what Whitey said happened. He said that very next morning, they were all cheering for these men. And he even said that one time before in one letter. He said it wasn't just, the three men escaping. Everyone in Alcatraz was escaping with them. And when they woke up that next morning, and I think even in one letter, he said he couldn't even sleep that night. He was waiting for the next morning. He knew what was going to happen. And everybody in there just went ballistic.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure the guards are trying to scream at other guards, hey, sound the alarm. And they probably couldn't hear anything because the prisoners were just going ape, and they were cheering, and they were, they knew that they had beat the system. That's great. And it's just something like out of a movie. Yes. It really is. It's just something out of a movie. It's just like they beat, like you said, they beat the system. Yes.
Well, when we've talked a lot about the, Clint Eastwood Escape from Alcatraz movie, and when you watch the film, which is usually the depiction of it, not just them, but others, either in books or in, visual form, that nobody knew what was happening except for the three, well, actually the four, including Alan West. So the four were the only ones that were aware of the escape. They kept it close to their chest, didn't reveal it to anybody. And the second part is when they went up at night, it was very quiet. They didn't make any noise. Everyone's asleep. It's dark, and they're just quietly getting to the top before they get away. And they don't, they make noise and they're going to get caught. Well, there was noise because of the thud from the covering, and a lot of people heard it. And there in the book, we have another inmate who was on the third tier, and he heard it, and he thought, like Whitey, that they were caught at that point and they were done with. And that also Whitey said in another excerpt, I don't know if you read it or not, but he said half the prison was aware of the escape plan.
Yeah.
They knew about it. They participated either directly or indirectly with either giving them materials that they needed, such as tools, spoons,
raincoats,
glue, paint. Well, they got the paints elsewhere, but they did assist with materials that they would need, that they would smuggle out either out of the kitchen area or out of the industries shop where they had tools and materials and glue to work with. And so it was very well known to most of the inmates. And actually, one of the things we haven't brought up was that when they did a search of the cells, because everything, as Whitey said, everything was locked down. All the inmates that morning, the morning of the escape, they got breakfast, and then they brought them back to their cells, and they were all kept there. And then, of course, the FBI comes and starts interviewing the inmates. Well, one of the things that also happened, which we haven't brought up at this point, was that the cells were searched. Every single cell was searched in the entire prison. And one of the things they found was there were other cells that had different levels of doing the same thing. They were trying to dig out the back of their cells. So it was known that was the approach that the four were taking to get out of the cells, but they were done in a much, much less level. It was only like initial work on some of the grills in the back of the cells. And some of them had like little drill marks to try to break up the cement. So they were nowhere near ready to escape with them, but they were inspired to do the same thing of kind of their own individual plan. So they realized that this information had gotten out to the prisoners of this is a way to get out of Alcatraz. They just didn't act on it enough.
Right.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And then they shut I guess they couldn't listen to the radio. This next entry, he says they shut the radio off. They didn't want us to hear any news of the escape. When they finally put the radio back on, we heard a song someone wrote about the escape. We cheered. Guards hated any mention of that song. 1.25 miles of treacherous water keeps men in Alcatraz is all I can remember. Guard kept the radio off, and at any mention, someone took it personal, like the escape wasn't fair. That's hilarious. Made trouble for all the staff. And I'm going to try to, you sent me a link for this and see if it plays.
It's on YouTube. You can actually listen to that song.
All right, let me back it up. All right, here it goes.
1.25 miles of treacherous water keeps men in Alcatraz. 3 men did what folks have claimed for years could not be done. 3 men broke through prison walls and left there on the run. Tried to make a liar out of anyone who said.
That's nice. I want to play a little bit because I don't know how much YouTube will let us play. So that's like a little bit of fair use. So. But that's from Sonny James, 1.25 miles. And if anybody wants to listen to it, you can go on YouTube and just type that in. But that's pretty funny.
It's amazing that someone wrote a song that quick.
Exactly.
After the escape. I mean, they must have, according to, because they didn't keep the radio off for that long. I mean, someone just, someone said, okay, that's a great song.
Yeah, well, your uncles were mused. Your uncles were mused for Sonny James there.
Well, when it would come on, they would turn it up loud for the guards and to make the guards mad, and the guards would yell, "Turn the radio off!" And it was just sort of this little game they were playing with the guards. That this guy wrote this song about the escape, and it's kind of a little folksy song that I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't aware of it until Ken sent me the letters that Whitey had written, and when we were looking at it, that's when it's like, because he wasn't sure if that was the name of the song. He couldn't quite remember. And so when it looked on YouTube, and there it was just sitting right there. It's like, wow, I can't believe it. It's just that memory of his was remarkable.
And that also backs up, what everybody has heard. And I believe it was even documented in the FBI files about, it was common knowledge or common for the prisoners to listen to baseball games on their headphones themselves. And there was a baseball game playing that night of the escape, which, most guards, I'm assuming, probably listen to the baseball games as long as along with everyone else. And, so you think about the guard who's in that tower at the docks, and you've got 2-3 men trying to, make it to the docks, and they're a little bit distracted by watching or listening to the baseball game that was on that night. I mean, no one's expecting an escape, so you're probably, I guess, just a regular old night, nothing really going on, and you're sitting there listening to your favorite, team play, and lo and behold, there's 3 men in a boat below you getting ready to escape. So
and not only that, but because I think Whitey does mention the baseball game. It was Whitey or the FBI files. It was one or the other.
Whitey mentions the baseball game, and it's also mentioned in the FBI files.
Right, and there was a game playing in the East Coast that was playing at later, because there were multiple games, of course, that day. Of course, in any day in baseball, you're going to have many games playing at the same time. But there was a game that was later in the evening that ended around 9 or 10 o'clock around that time, and then of course you usually have the post game to comment.
I think it was the St. Louis. I think it was the Cardinals.
Yeah, St. Louis and somebody else. I don't remember the other team, but it was the time frame lines up. It's the time that when they escaped was when the game was still being played. So again, it's corroborating information from another source.
Kooky. All right,
that's what you said earlier about the book. Everything that we bring up in this book and we introduce to people, there are sources to back up what we're saying. So it's not far-fetched to believe that the guard was sitting there listening to a baseball game.
Yeah, like I said, when we actually went there, because I didn't really notice this the first time I went there like 100 years ago, but when we went back with you guys for the podcast, I was like, it made total sense to me, because the pier was a cement pier, and it had these gigantic cement pylons. And so there was no like gaps, like, slats from wood, like you go to some piers and it's just like, they're all made out of wood and a big, railroad ties or something like that. And you can actually, there's usually a gap in between. You can see if anything there. You can't, it's black down there. Even during the daytime, you can't see anything down there. So, there was a perfect cover for them underneath that guard tower, because the guard tower was like, positioned in a way, and so he wouldn't have known unless they started screaming.
Right. I mean, and you're talking, it's dark, there was a little bit of a fog in the area, according to some of the reports. So, I mean, once they made it, even just up under the, near that guard tower, I mean, they were pretty much home free. Yeah. Because once, like you said, if you have ever been out to Alcatraz and you look at those docks and you look at that void up under there, and oh my gosh, there's so much room up under there that once you're up under there, no one's going to see you.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost, the dock area is almost like 30 yards by 20 yards. It's pretty big. So it's not like just this dock that they walk out and they get on the boat. So, because
it's also about 8 feet above the water line. It's very, very high above the water, because it had to make it, because the boats had to be, at foot, when you get off the boat, it has to be at, foot level. So they had to raise it up. Or on the taller side. One of the things I wanted to mention was about the Whitey letters that we've been already kind of uncovering is, he gives the big story, of course, the Alcatraz story, and we'll get into his assessments of John and Clarence and Frank Morris and Alan West. He has comments about them. But he gives, he gives us these little details in the story, like the song that you just played and the baseball game that night. These little details that we can go back and verify. And if he's right in the small details, then that gives more credence to the big details. It's like, why would he say truthfully this part and then lie about this other part? Yeah, it just gives him more weight of what he's saying as the truth, because you can go back and you can verify a lot of these things, and we were able to do that.
Yeah. Well, this next section talks about what we were just talking about before, but it comes from Whitey's mouth about Herman and German. It says, Herman the German. What's his first name again?
Charles.
I always forget his name. Charles Herman.
I swear I thought his name was Herman the German there for the longest time.
I know.
Whitey say.
He said, on the yard, first day over, comes comes a guard. We called Herman the German. He was all upset, young and new in the job, had been there on the night of the escape. When we left, they pushed off the vent cover he's talking about that night, and it fell landing flat on the floor where the seagulls slept. And we were all awake, and we knew what was happening. Sleep impossible, but we carried it on a normal way. So you're talking about what you said. He says you couldn't sleep. When the cover of the roof hit, it made a loud thump. Could hear it on C block. I was up on the top tier. The seagulls let up a loud chatter that we could have alerted the guard and could hear it all over. And any noise outside the ordinary would demand an explanation. We leapt out of bed and started banging and stuff like that. And the floor to mask the noise, then stopped. And then fortunately, the thump and the seagulls didn't spoil the escape. Herman the German was miserable. We egged him on when they said they blamed him. Said, "Well, that's what you get. You're never going to make lieutenant now." The report will follow. That report will follow you most of your career, man, as the man who let the guys escape Alcatraz. So they were really, my God, they're really egging him on. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, because I mean, the authorities, the prison officials were blaming him. The prisoners now were, especially Whitey, egging it on. Oh, you're never going to make any go up in the ranks. This is the end of your career.
Well, and again, so Whitey says in the letter years later, Charles Herman was blamed for the escape, and
Yes.
we have the reprimand letter written by Warden Blackwell that is his saying because you didn't do your nightly duty, you are blamed for this. And when I talked to him on the phone, he still carries the weight of that. He still feels it was an injustice that he was. So again, Whitey gets it exactly right, and we can prove it.
But you really kind of think about it. They blamed him for that one night, but how many times were they out of their cells every night working on the raft?
Mm-hmm.
There were other guards that, besides Herman, he wasn't the only one who walked the floors, at night for months, and no one ever noticed those fake heads in the bed. I mean, that night was not the first time they put those fake heads in the bed. They had used it for weeks and months as they were, going behind the wall and up onto the to the cell block to do work on the boat. So every single guard who walked by those cells and didn't notice that those were not real people in that bed are just as guilty.
Yeah.
So, but they picked on him because, it was the night that everything happened.
Sure.
As far as the escape, and they blamed him for it.
Absolutely. Well, here's one where he's talking about, again, them working and drilling and stuff. A guy named, he said, I don't know, Ionelli, who's
that was a friend of his, a fellow inmate.
Oh, a fellow inmate Ionelli knew and would cause noise to cover the noise by blowing a charge on his trumpet. So he had a trumpet and a bugle, and that would get a reaction every time. He goes, guys would come hollering charge, and lots of us would bang the bunks and the two legs, make loud noise when we'd get a rhythm and cadence and wake up the whole island and mask any noise of bursting out of the rear of their cells. So he said it was no easy task. So Carnes had supplied them with a star drill, but that could help shatter the concrete. So that's a pretty telling piece of information right there. Yes. On the behind, knowing that really solidifies what you guys have revealed in your book, that the whole inmate population was in on it.
Oh yes, most definitely. They, again, you can't get 50 raincoats and someone that you're getting it from doesn't know what you're using it for. You had John and Clarence and Frank Morris going around Sunday, before the escape, telling everybody bye. I mean, everybody knew what was happening. It's just amazing that, for all of those months that no one ever let it out. No one ever, revealed anything to any guard. Nobody ever let on to anybody that this was happening. And the only way that that's going to happen, especially with the African-American, population that was there. I mean, what did they have to gain out of this?
Yeah.
Other than they were hoping that the prison was going to be shut.
Yeah.
And they would be, afforded a better, prison to go to with access to lawyers and stuff. But yeah, it was these three men, Whitey Bulger, Mickey Cohen, and Bumpy Johnson, pretty much controlled the rest of the population in that prison. Bumpy Johnson controlled the African American group and pretty much put a kibosh on anybody saying anything. And then you had Whitey Bulger and Mickey Cohen, who pretty much, they were pretty well known, especially Mickey. And they put the kibosh on anybody else sharing anything.
Yeah.
And, that really probably helped them not to worry about, we're going to get caught because someone's going to rat us out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then here's another section where he talks about your uncle's character and also Frank Morris. He said the Anglin brothers were quiet, easygoing men, always together, attracted no attention. And Morris would exercise, ball playing, handball, and could lift weights, but didn't. He was strong physically and mentally, not one for laughter, as far as Frank Morris. Anglin brothers were quiet, easygoing, neat-looking, and were not the regular run-of-the-mill, aggressive prisoner, quick to fight, exhibiting aggression, angry. No guard would ever think they were up to anything. So they really kept a low profile. So that there you got like a good character sketch of your uncles, which pretty much matches what everybody in your family knew about those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every family member said the same thing about John and Clarence. All of my aunts and uncles, my mom, when they used to reminisce and tell us about John and Clarence, they always said they were good, honest guys. And when I say honest,
yeah,
as far as what they robbed in the bank. But I mean,
as honest as a thief can be.
Exactly. I mean, they were not the criminals where they were murdering people, and even during the robbery, as Mike, and I had pointed out, I mean, they stopped everything when a woman fainted to give her water. I mean, that was just their nature. They came from that lifestyle. And that was like Whitey, that said, that's what really aided them too. They were so quiet. Guards never suspected that you had these three men up to doing what they were doing. And, that definitely helped them.
Yeah. And then he goes on and talks a little bit about West. He said, months before June 11th, West confided in someone about the escape. Morris, of the three most inclined to violence, told West, you eat each meal with us. I think we talked about that. In the yard, you walk with one of us. Anytime you're out of your cell, you're with one of us. This promoted paranoia in West, obviously. Morris was concerned. A warden could set a trap if West caused it, intended to make West pay the price and then and there, feeling the guards could have knowledge and gunned them down or made their way off the island. He says he believes that's the reason why West didn't leave that night.
Oh, yes, most definitely. And when you go and you read some of the interviews that they did with West in the FBI report, clearly he was not in the loop on the change of plans. I mean, we went into detail about how the three men had alternate clothes to wear, and West wasn't aware of it. And that was something that the FBI picked up on because they questioned him when he gave his first interview with them. Why did you put your clothes and take your clothes with you? And he was like, well, I didn't know there was any other clothes. So he was clearly out of the loop, and it was because of his loud mouth. And then Whitey, says that Frank actually was going to do him in.
Actually, I have that quote right here. I'll read it real quick.
Okay.
He says, West had a big mouth and said something that upset the others. He was told, whenever you're out of the cell, you be with one of us at all times, or all three of us. Morris made a knife from a dinner knife from the mess hall. If we walk into a trap, I'm doing West in.
Boom.
Now, and so this is a very interesting thing that the FBI reports back up what he just got through saying. Wes doesn't mention anything about a knife in the first interview, but he's interviewed twice, because in the FBI file, there's another interview that they do with him, and he pretty much says the same thing that from the first interview, but they ask him about any weapons that the trio might have had. And he said, the only weapon that I know that they had was one of them had a kitchen knife that he had taken from the kitchen. So, or a butcher, large knife. I believe that's how he said it. But it backs up what Whitey said, that Morris had a knife and was going to do Wes in if they got caught. So, with John being very good friends with Wes and probably knowing this very thing, if Whitey knew about it, I guarantee you John knew about it. And so I can see John going to Wes and telling him, you don't want to go with us, because if anything goes wrong, Morris is going to do you in. Because they were good friends. I mean, that's, when Wes first learns of the hole not covered up in the ceiling, he doesn't go to Frank Morris. He goes to John England, and he tells John about it, and because they were friends. And they're the actual two that started the digging through the back. Frank Morris wasn't even included in the plan at that point in time. So I can see John, which I can understand the way I believe John was. He probably went to Wes and said, you don't want to be a part of this. And Wes pretty much bailed out. He made it look like he was going to, but I don't think he actually did it.
And what happens is, in the FBI report, it says that Wes said that on April 25th, which is about a little over a month before the escape, he stopped digging out the back of his cell. He hadn't finished the job yet. He got close, but he stopped at that point. So that was probably, inferring the information we have, when he was told about what Morris was intending to do to him. So he starts giving up at that point. Yeah.
I don't think he was ever intending to go. And, something else that Whitey, I don't know if you have it in here, maybe you do or not.
Yeah, he says he chickened out.
Yeah, I did ask Whitey about, what would have happened to Alan West, if everybody in the prison, because they were cheering for these men to go. You hear how they were cheering, and they were covering up for them weeks and months in the past, and then the night of the escape, the next morning. I said, what would y'all have done to Wes if they found out that he ratted them out, and the FBI was now going to be able to catch him? And Whitey said, well, one, he wouldn't have survived 5 seconds in the yard. And he said, Wes told them what we told him to say. So there you go.
There you go. All right, this next section is he talks about Mickey Cohen. Mickey Cohen, remember him well. When he was bailed out from Alcatraz, he was talking to a bunch of guys on the bleacher about should he jump bail or come back. Everyone said, make a run for it. Go to Brazil, father a child. They will never get you by extradition. When he returned, we thought he was crazy.
That is really interesting, because it's the same thing that the brothers did. And I'm assuming Frank Morris. I'm assuming Frank married someone, but I do know John and Clarence did. Yeah. So they did the very thing that Whitey told Mickey Cohen to do. Mm-hmm. But, they were shocked when he came back. And that is actually about the time that they changed the plan and started on a new boat. So stop and think about this for a minute. They had a raft that was almost completed, ready to go. And then all of a sudden they change and do a new boat.
Yeah.
Why? Why would you change? Why would you take all that work that you've already completed on this one boat, and you go to make another boat, and you only have a few weeks to do it in?
Yeah.
And the FBI said that they took that boat that was left behind, and they filled it full of air, set weights on it, and it held air for hours. So here was a good, complete boat that you could have taken, but what was the difference?
Well, and not only that, but it exposed them to danger, because now they had to get new raincoats. They had to get new supplies, new materials, glue, sewing materials, raincoats. So they had to go back to the inmates or either steal them or ask for them again.
Yeah.
So that was a big risk for them when they were so close to being finished to have to start over that part of it.
And to the night of the escape, they still had a little bit of work left to do on the boat. The only difference that I was able to think about was the first boat didn't have the ability to be towed. It didn't have.
Yes, you were saying.
It didn't have the eye on the front of the boat or the raft that they could loop a cord around so that they could then, hang on to it as it's being pulled. They would, if they had used that boat, someone would have had to physically hold the rope in their hands, and hope that they're not pulled out of the boat when the boat takes off. I mean, you had to have some way of securing that rope down. And we know that that is true because Cliff Fish talks about when they find the raft on the beach, it had the ability to be towed because they took a rope and tied to it and pulled it. So that lets you know right then that was the difference. When Mickey Cohen comes back and says, "Hey, I've got a boat that's going to pick y'all up out in the middle of the bay. You've got to get there." And then John goes, "Okay, now we're going to use the prison boat to pull us. We need a new boat." And that's when that boat started being constructed.
And on top of that, in Frank Morris's cell, they found a magazine, Popular Mechanics, I believe,
yes,
that talked about a raft. And in the picture, it has an eye on the front about towing. So that was how they got that information, was from the magazine that Morris had in his cell that he left behind.
Yeah. I'm just still, the thing that amazes me is how they figured out how to vulcanize the rubber. That is the thing that really blows my mind.
Well, that's a Morris, contribution from his reading of how to do that.
It's amazing.
Well, and too, though, think about John and Clarence. Now, I don't know about Frank Morris. Frank Morris grew up in foster homes, and so he was bouncing around from place to place. But John and Clarence grew up in an environment where they would make their own stuff. They actually made their own bicycles. They created a car. Believe it or not, my mom, she gave it a name. It wasn't a car, but they created this thing and they took tires and stuffed moss in it. So they were very creative. There's no telling that they might have even made something like that in the past. Mm-hmm. And they knew about how to vulcanize stuff.
Yeah.
You stop and think about it. You taking something that most people would never have considered, and they had the ability to do that.
It's pretty amazing. This other thing was it's interesting. It's a short one. It's referring to the 1975 picture of them standing in front of the anthills. And it says, nose, nostrils, distinct. I'd say it's him.
He was talking about Clarence in that part of the photo, that it's about Clarence, that he says that's the Clarence I know.
Yep. I mean, that was something else too. And I,
so did you send him a copy of it?
No, he actually, I don't know how. Not only did he send me the copy of the 70, I have it right here, but not only did he send me that photo, he sent me two other photos where in the History Channel where Michael Street does the analysis between the two, the face. I mean, he sends a picture of that too. And on all three pictures, he wrote that was the England brothers in Brazil. In fact, he even says it on the back. He said the England brothers in Brazil. He recognized them. So here you've got someone who was the last person to see them before they left, and he recognized them. So, I mean, I don't know what you can say other than he ID'd them himself.
Yeah, he did. That's crazy. Let me see some of the other ones we get in before we cold. It talks about the cold water. We talked about that. Oh, this is interesting. I wanted to talk about this. He's talking about this woman, Jolene. He says, can't remember the exact words used by the lion Jolene woman who masquerades as a Alcatraz historian because as a child she lived there. On one visit there, I went to a bookstore and asked for Leon Thompson, wanted to confront him on his lies about better men than him. I asked him, Jolene said, he's not here today. Would you like to buy his books? I said, no, thanks. I only read nonfiction. She said, his books are true. I said, I read his books and lies. She didn't like it. And I said, you also don't tell the truth, saying you ran around the cell house as a child, something to that effect. Told her, I was there in the cell house, never saw a woman or a child. Would have never happened. She didn't like that somewhere and downplayed Clarence and John. I wanted to write her, but didn't on an issue. They were country people. I took her remarks insulting and trying to minimize the genius of the escape. Her father was an employee, probably angry and trying to minimize the genius of the escape. Rock closed down a year later. Jolene was a big critic, and I'm sure she didn't like meeting me, who dared question the validity of her claims. She made her life career of fact that she lived on the island. We never saw them. They never saw us. We never heard them, but everyone heard us miles away when we acted up. Sound travels far over the water.
And great
color there.
That was so funny because I haven't when we were out at in 2012. She is the person who's off to my left. I'm sitting next to Michael Dykes, and then there's I believe a guard, and then she's at the end. And she's a well-known writer. She's written multiple books. Her dad was the acting warden on call the night of the escape.
Got it.
I actually believe she probably takes it very personal that it happened on her dad's watch. But regardless, it happened. But she's never believed that either one of them ever made it. In fact, she's the reason why I went down the road that I went down, because she's the one who made some very disparaging comments about John and Clarence. She believed that, they were a bunch of dumb. In fact, I think she even said this, that a bunch of dumb farm hicks that were lucky to be included in on the plan with Frank Morris. She credited everything to Frank Morris. John and Clarence were, dropouts from school, but, so was Frank Morris. He didn't finish school. He dropped out very early also. And so, the way she said it, and that's what just, oh my gosh.
That was the fuel.
Like I said, I've never hit a lady, nor would I ever hit one. But I'm glad that the marshal was in between me and her. So
yeah. Well, listen, you should dedicate the book to her. That was she was the fuel.
I didn't want to bring her name up. I used to always just say another writer, but
yeah,
she is the reason why I decided to go down this path.
I just love the fact that Whitey dressed her down the way he did. That's brilliant. It's pretty brilliant.
And the thing you have to remember too is he doesn't say when this happened, but most likely it was during his 16 years on the run.
It was.
And he goes to Alcatraz, and she talks to him, and he talks to her, and he doesn't get ratted out. He's at the prison again. And
does he tell her that it's him?
I don't think so. I don't think she knew who it was.
That's possible.
That's hilarious. I was going to ask if that's where, because I couldn't see the context there based upon his writing, but it sounds like he was there.
He was there. He went to the island.
He went out to, I want to say he said one time before he went out to, or it was well known, he went out multiple times to Alcatraz.
That's friggin' what?
He was on the run.
The cojones, man.
Well, it's like I told Art when we were doing some filming, I said, and it was already like 55 years. I said, John could walk right by you right now and you wouldn't even know who he was. You're not going to recognize him. And I mean, I'm sure that, when he went up to Jolene, she didn't know who he was. But all she knew was he had been there before. And there were other prisoners, I'm sure, that had come back before. But, she probably didn't know he was on the run.
Exactly. I think very few prisoners who were on the run went and visited Alcatraz. So
it would be amazing if we find out during our investigation in Brazil if John and Clarence ever went back.
Interesting. I don't think they would have gone back.
I don't know. I mean, at some point in time, I really believe they felt comfortable enough to come back to the United States. Because as time passes and your feature changes, and they're not really looking for them. I mean, if they were alive today, they could walk into the United States and no one would know who they were.
Yeah, because I think they knew where Whitey was the whole time.
I've said the same.
I think the FBI did, and it wasn't until the U.S. Marshals got involved that I think, if I'm correct, I have to check with my friend who was she was on the FBI team, but I think, deep down, I think they knew where he was, because Whitey had a lot of political connections.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his brother was a state, he was a state rep for Massachusetts politically, which is what kept him, and the whole, his connection to the FBI while he was in the Winter Hill gang. There was that, so there was, I think there was certain part of it where it was just like, don't ask, don't tell, just leave him go, because he had money. I think he had like $500,000 in cash inside the walls of the, and I know that apartment building. I've seen that apartment building. It's not like a lavish place,
That was something that my wife had brought up. I have never really. I mean, you've seen some of the items that he sent me in some of these letters, some of these postcards. Unbelievable, the date and how old they are, and only one of them he never signed. But it's almost kind of like my wife said, he was trying to tell me something. I mean, why would you send me a postcard that was dated 1902 that was written by this, I don't even know who this couple was that was writing each other? I mean, how in the heck did he get a hold of a postcard like that? And why did he want to send it to me? And it's not the first one. I mean, I've got multiple postcards that he sent me, Christmas cards, and the way that he would talk about things, it's almost kind of like he was trying to tell me something without telling me something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm sure the guards were reading each of these letters as they went out to me. So I'm still, to this day, I'm not sure what some of this stuff means. And two, whether or not maybe it's a location of some of that money.
Treasure hunt.
Because some of these things are pictures. Some of these postcards have pictures in Boston.
There you go.
So
I just want to read one last quote, because I know we're just about out of time. It's actually the very top of the page. It says, "When you leave, you have to cut ties with all family members. Not doing so will expose them to harassment by the authorities." So, Whitey was saying, and he talked about this in the letters, that when you go, you have to go forever. You can't come back. You can't make any noise. And that's exactly what happened. And we talk about that in the book, that, the brothers paid a price, even though they escaped and they had good lives. They never really saw their family again. I mean, there might, there's a couple little moments that may have happened, but
I think Uncle Man saw them a few times.
Uncle Man kept in touch with them.
Right. But they can never really go back. Everything they cherish, everything they love to do, because they talk about in their letters from Alcatraz that they mailed home, how much they missed home and wanted to get as many stories as they could about Christmas time and Thanksgiving, and just try to relive those family memories. They never had that again. No. I mean, they created new ones in Brazil, but the family they can never embrace again. And Whitey said, if you want to be free, that's the price you're going to have to pay. And they paid that price.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of that line in that movie Heat with Robert De Niro, where he talks about the same thing. He says, when you got to leave, you just drop it all. You can't have any attachments, and you'll never see this world again, like this life.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. My grandfather, when he saw them in Alabama, according to this is what we were told that he told them, because he went to their cells to see them after they were convicted on the state charges, before they were shipped out to other prisons. And he told them, he said, if you ever get out, leave and never come back. And so I think they knew that it was okay with the family. They knew that the family was going to understand that, if they were ever able to make it out, they would leave and never come back. So, and that's what happened.
Yep. That's what happened. And more to come.
Oh, yes. Way more.
Way more to come. All right, guys. once again, congratulations on what we accomplished and what we're about to embark on. It's going to be a different journey.
Oh, yes.
Everything we kind of visualize, it's almost like, we willed it to happen, and we're excited. We're excited.
Yes. Many new stories to tell.
Exactly. And we're going to have a podcast after we do this series to talk about all the behind the scenes stuff too.
The things that we couldn't say.
Things we couldn't say, things that, that got left out, there's going to be a lot of stuff. So exciting times. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right.